So now this is the moment. Now I would like to invite the keynote speaker of today's session, Benazir Ilahi Munni, Lecturer, Institute of Modern Languages, to enlighten us with her lecture. So our warm welcome to Benazir Ilahi ma'am. I hope everyone's doing good today. And as you know that today is a very special day for many reasons, especially for me because I have never done a workshop before, and although I'm very much a newbie here like you in research, I would try to do my best and would try to kind of give you whatever lessons my teachers gave me and help you along the way. I hope you have your research topics with you today or the preliminary works that you have done on your researches, so that from this workshop you can actually take something away and you can actually implement them in your research when you do them. And so without any further ado, let us start. And firstly, I would like to thank our honorable director sir for taking this workshop to the next level. Honestly, I didn't have this bigger plan in my mind. I just wanted to have an interactive class with you about these challenging, I would say, topic, and I wanted to help you. But sir really stood up and sir really took this to the next level. So thank you, sir. Thank you for arranging this, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to get together. All right, so the topic says it all, I think. Qualitative and quantitative research methodologies, conducting research as a beginner. So we are all beginners here. I think I can speak for myself that I am a beginner in research, and I do not call myself an expert of any sort. So I thought this is a way of kind of having a communication with you about what I learned from my research mistakes and to help you with your research issues. All right, this is the outline. This is how the outline would look like. I would talk about what is research and a researcher, what is a research problem, because let's face it, sometimes the problem is Bismillah golod hoy amader, and we really don't want that in terms of research, because what would we go? Would we go far with a faulty research problem or research idea in our heads? No. So I thought this is something that we need to address. Thirdly, quantitative and qualitative approaches. This is going to be just an intro to these two approaches, because further, when we will go into the literature review and research questions, how to compose research questions, you will need to understand where I'm coming from. So if we do not know the basics of qualitative and quantitative research, we won't understand what writing a research question for a qualitative research means, or what writing a research question for a quantitative research means. So you see where I'm coming from. All right, next we have the literature review, because it is important, although we may not really feel it right now, but it is. I will get to that. What can be cited? Ki cite kora jabe, ki cite kora jabe na. Not everything is quotable. Then research questions. How can we compose research question? What to question in a research question, to be precise. Then data collection, and data collection goes for both qualitative and quantitative, and we need to discuss either each of them individually, and so that's something we will do. Quantitative data collection, how to analyze quantitative data. Then we'll move on to qualitative data collection and how to analyze qualitative data, and obviously throughout the session we will have a conversational style going on. So I will talk to you, I will give you things to do. This is going to be a classwork kind of an interaction. So tomra you will be given activities and you will do them readily with me. I will help you if you need it. Ma'am and sir will join. So everything will be conversational. All right, so let us start. As you know, do we know that there are 6 steps in a research, right? We have heard about it, right? It's there somewhere in our heads. We cannot probably locate it right now, but it's there. So what are those 6 steps? Can somebody help me with the first step? Yes? Yes? Yes. Identify the research problem. So firstly, we need to know what to research on, and then moving on to, we will have a literature review, and then we will have a purpose statement, then we will have collecting data or methodology statements, then we will have analyzing the statements or data collection, and then we will move on to lastly into the reporting or evaluation of the data. So let us go here from what our first slide here says, what is research and what is a researcher. So as you can see from here, research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic and issue. So no matter the topic, if it's an educational issue, a controversial issue, a conflicting issue, an issue that there is a gap that we need to address, or an issue that really bothers us in language classes or in our ELT classes in general, or in any educational issues that we feel that needs to be probed into, that can be a research topic. So what is a research? When the current literature, existing knowledge or issue on any given topic has a need for further investigation, revision, re-evaluation, so looking into that topic. So you see, whenever we think about a research topic, or whenever we see that there is gap in knowledge, gap in understanding that we need to address, we go into and think about the topic in terms of research. So okay, we conduct research to address that gap in knowledge, as you know. So so far a research would be what? An educational issue that needs to be discussed and developed further, so that we may know the views, the issues, the entire phenomenon, and understand how to improve on that. And next, you have what to call a researcher. So a researcher would be anybody, as ma'am mentioned very rightly, that a researcher is a thinker, right? As Descartes also said that I think, therefore I am. So a researcher is that person who thinks on things. So a researcher is therefore not only someone who conducts research, he also thinks and he also communicates. So a researcher is a communicator, is essentially a communicator, because whenever I have my findings in front of me, whenever I go into and really think about a topic, I want the people to know what I found out from that topic or what I learned from that topic. So a researcher is a communicator in a sense that he or she tries to communicate through research, through the research findings, through to you. All right. So I hope it sort of opened up avenues to think on research and researcher. Now let us move on to the next slide, which talks about what's the research problem. So I wanted it to be a pun on what's the problem, but as you can see, it was a poor wordplay, so it's there in front of you. As we know by now, a researcher conducts a study on a particular research problem. According to Creswell, he says that, and Creswell's book is, by the way, this very fat book, which I think is, I used to follow this book like a Bible when I was a student, because I thought this helped me so greatly, and even though my supervisor, my teacher was an immense help, but this book really helped me when I was struggling at home with my research, but this book really got me through the night. And so Creswell, I would like to quote him and say that research problems are educational issues, controversies, or concerns that guide the need for conducting a study. So what is a research question, everybody? Sorry, what is a research problem, everybody? It is an educational issue, controversy, concerns
for the further study.
So there is a gap in knowledge, right? A research problem, it stems from the fact that there is something to be discussed, there is something to be worked on, there is something to contribute on, some issue to really reflect on. So that's a research problem, and we will know more about it and where a research problem really situates in a research paper. So let us look into that, since this is the very first step of our research. So think about our research problems. Everybody thinks about their research topics and their research problems in their minds while we go through the slide. So where should a research problem section go in a research paper? Where does it go? Where do we locate a research problem, or where do we find a research problem? For example, you have downloaded a research paper from the internet and you want to go through it, but you don't go through all of it, do you? It's like 196 pages of written data. You don't go every line. so that you could find what's the research about. So where to locate a research problem would be very easy. It's at the very opening section of a research. It's at the it's basically the first few paragraphs of a research. So it's at the introduction part of a research. As the slide also says, you can locate this section in the opening or in the introductory paragraphs of a research paper. It will go in the statement of the problem section at the very start of the research report. So you have at the very start you have the research problem, and that's how you start your research paper. This section can be organized as shown below. This is sort of something to get to work on. You'll have your topic first, then you'll have your research problem that you will discuss. Justification of the importance of studying the problem. So remember we did rationale in our lesson plan? Rationale. So this is also kind of a rationale for our research. Justification of why we are actually reading through this research, or why is it that this research had to be done. Next, the deficiencies in our existing knowledge about the problem. This will heavily be influenced by the literature review, because otherwise you wouldn't know what deficiencies are there unless you know what's the current literature on the topic is. So that's something that will come from that. And lastly, the audiences that will benefit from a study. Remember, a research enlightens people. A research in its core goal is to improve practice. So if your research doesn't add to the practice, somehow improve practice, somehow enlighten you or other people, that research is pretty much, you should rethink the goals of your research. All right, so the research problem, so far we know that it's a statement, right? It's a statement. It's about the problems of research. It's not a question, because that would be a research question. And also it's not a purpose statement, right? So far, are we on the same page, everybody? What is a research problem?
A statement of the problem.
Okay, keep that in your minds. Okay. So now we will do something together. As you can see from the activity and what you need to do, the instruction reads, identify the more improved research problem from your understanding. From these three statements, I want all of you to write just the right answer. Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Which one is the more improved research problem? Think about what you know so far about a research problem. You will have 1 minute. There's no way of knowing who I'm going to ask, so better do it, everybody. Okay, I think more or less we know which one the answer would be, right? Right? Don't work too hard. There are other activities coming, so take it slow. All right, any brave souls who would like to volunteer? No, Choiti? A smile won't cut it today. Yes, bolo.
Ma'am, A and C seems more improved than B, so I'm gonna go with A.
Okay, Choiti wants to go with A. All right. Anybody else who would like to add to that or suggest a different option? All right, so let us go back 2 minutes and think what I said about a research problem. It's an issue, a challenge that we want to address, right? It's not a question, right? Because that would be a research question. It's not a purpose statement, because that would be a statement of the purpose. So what is it? It's about the problem. So which one? B, right? Right? Quite unanimous. B. Why? Because it talks about what are the major reasons, what are the challenges. That's why students in Bangladesh often find the idea of research challenging is the educational culture. So they are going to talk about, they are going to probe into that educational culture that's going wrong, that's going, somehow there's something missing, so that it's not promoting student in terms of research. All right, so now that we know what a research problem is not, I think we will be able to identify it better. Moving on. Qualitative and quantitative approach. So let us make something clear that this is not going to be from now on qualitative or quantitative approaches. The rest of the slides are not on this. at least not right now, right away. But I just wanted to introduce, as I said, what a qualitative or what a quantitative research is, so that when we read about what is a research question, how to write a research question, we can think in terms of a qualitative or quantitative research question. Is that clear, everybody? All right. So as you know, qualitative and quantitative research approaches are differ from each other in terms of mainly their data collection process and how they analyze that data. Because qualitative data, let's face it, is very different from a quantitative data set, right? That much we agree on, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So a quantitative data is different from a qualitative data. We know that, right? All right. So if we know that, what are the major characteristics? Now let's look into the major characteristics of quantitative research that we need to have in our heads so that we can move forward in the research. Number one, describing a research problem through a description of trends or an explanation of the relationship among variables. দুইটা নতুন শব্দ এসেছে, trend and variable. So are we familiar with these words? We are, right? Sort of. We can, it's somewhere there, we can't locate it right now which part of our brain it is, but we know the words, right? All right, that's okay by me. So a trend is an overall tendency of responses on an issue. So trend, আমরা কি বুঝি? ট্রেন্ড বললে আমরা কি বুঝি? Something that's, for example, I don't know, what is the moment right now? Anything, any pop culture references? Now is your time to flourish. Anything that's going on, that's famous right now, whatever, gossip, yes? BTS? Really? It's old news. it's old news because they're in the army right now, right? But what I was, okay, so this is a trend, something that's trendy, right? Something that's the moment, something that's talked about, something that is readily understood by anybody. So that is something trend jodi ota hoy, tahole in an overall tendency of responses, ki dhoroner responses or which turn do the responses take is a trend. On the other hand, a variable is an attribute or characteristic of an individual. So it could be anything and everything, right? If it's an attribute of an individual, it could be the fact that I like lecture-based teaching, or the fact that I like group works in more than lecture-based teaching. Those are variables to discuss, right? So variables are important because they're measurable. Variables are measurable মানে কি? Counted, calculated, numeric status আমরা ওটাকে ফেলতে পারি. That's how a variable is different. So a quantitative research largely deals with variables. On the other hand, qualitative research আমরা এরকম আরেকটা central idea পাবো যেটা আমরা পরে আলোচনা করব, but let's move on. Secondly, providing a major role for the literature review in suggesting research questions and justifying the research problem. In quantitative research, literature review comes at the foremost, I think not the foremost, but the second foremost. So after the introduction, you have the literature review. So in quantitative research, in order for us to document or jot down or have our research problems or research questions, we need to have a literature review first. We need to have those initial readings first, and we need to understand the topic first. So a literature review helps us immensely in justifying the research problem. Why are we researching this? Because past researchers have somewhat left a gap in this research, because past researchers have somewhat left out this particular angle of discussing this topic. So that's where the research problem comes in. Thirdly, collecting numeric data from a large number of people using instruments with preset, closed-ended questions. Remember these words: preset, closed-ended questions, and responses. There are two things I want you to remember, take away from this sentence, is that large number of data and closed-ended questions. Large number of data is a characteristic trait of quantitative research, because in quantitative research you get to have a large data set. You get to have a larger population in your research, in your research. But on the other hand, in qualitative research, we'll see that the situation changes. We'll go into that later. And closed-ended questions are basically what? Guided questions, questions that you don't get much options on, questions that you are given certain response options on, questions that are kind of structured for you to answer from, right? Because the researcher needs a certain kind of data from you. And if he just leaves the thing to you, then you'll just give your own opinion, and it will vary from person to person. So in a quantitative research, our goal is to be as structured as possible. Lastly, analyzing data, trends and variables using statistical analysis software such as Excel, SPSS. We will look into these later on. So, major characteristics of a qualitative research. Firstly, exploring a problem and developing a detailed understanding about a central phenomenon. So, as I was saying, this is not about variables and trends anymore. What is it about? What is it about, everybody? Central phenomenon. So, what does a phenomenon mean? Very good. An issue, right? An issue, a central phenomena, that topic of our discussion. So, central phenomenon সম্পর্কে detail, in-depth, as much in-depth view as possible from the participants we try to gather in qualitative research. So, একটা just একটা topic চিন্তা করো, যেমন ধরো role of conferences or role of workshops in understanding research better. This could be a qualitative research. I would just conduct this research right now with you because all of you are here. I have about 40 people. So if I wanted to take say 10 people from you and wanted to conduct a qualitative research right now, I could just ask you one-on-one questions. I could ask you questions about what are your thoughts about this, and so on and so forth. So it would be about this central phenomenon that I want to probe into. Secondly, having the literature review establish the meaning and importance of the central phenomenon, and the research problem and research questions are stated in a broad way so as to the participants' experiences. What does that mean? It may sound like a convoluted sentence, but it's not. Let's look into this sentence. For example, as I said, literature review plays a really crucial role in quantitative research because আমাদের ওটা লাগে কি কারণে? Research question, research problem বের করতে, তাই না? But in qualitative research, it's very interesting. Qualitative research, you don't need to per se need a literature review to drive you to your research problem or drive you to your research questions. It can come later on, much later on in the study. Even just before your conclusion, a literature review could be stated in a qualitative research, because here the focus is the participants' views. Here the focus is knowing about the central phenomenon and whatever the participants think about that phenomenon. So the literature review kind of supports, complements, adds to that. It does not drive the research. So that's something to, yes ma'am. Okay, so thirdly, thirdly, collecting data based on words from a small number of individuals using interview and observational protocols with open-ended questions so that the participants' views can be thoroughly documented. As I just mentioned, that the participants' views, documenting those views, documenting the participants and their views is of crucial importance in qualitative data. And if you missed it, I would remind you again, a small data set. Did you notice it in the sentence? A small number of what? A small number of individuals using interview and observational data protocols. So we'll come into that, what is a protocol, what is an observational data, etc. But for now, let us see that it's how contrary to one another, to each other they are initially from a skim view. Alright, fourthly, transcribing and analyzing the data for significant information, themes using text analysis and interpreting the larger meaning of the findings. So this is something that we will again look into, that the data are kind of a gateway for the researcher to reflect on them. So here we have a beautiful picture of Creswell, the man, the myth, whatever, and he says that qualitative and quantitative are 2 points in a continuum, not 2 end points in a dichotomy. So basically, the way we kind of position quantitative and qualitative researchers as at the opposite poles is not the way to look at them. Creswell says that they are rather 2 processes of a same what should I say, different means to the same goal. So in qualitative and quantitative researches, they don't have to be each other's arch enemies or anything. They can coexist. We can use mixed method researches, as you might as well know. Moving on. Here again we come back with jolting some of our memory. Alright, choose the correct answer. You will use quantitative research if your research problem requires you to. When to use a quantitative and qualitative research, there are situations given for you. So think about them for 2 minutes. All right. Okay. So when in the first question number one, what's the answer? Nammi. B, measure variables and their impacts. Are we all okay? Okay. All right. Number 2. Anybody? C. All right, let's look at C. Generate theories based on participants' perspectives. Very good. So we know what's those things that we need to really look at in terms of a qualitative and a quantitative research. Very good, everybody. Yes. Just applaud yourselves, because why not? Okay, so here now we move on to a little advanced activity. So here we have 2 citations, and in those citations we have the research topics hidden. So now you look at these citations and you tell me which one of these is a qualitative research, which one of these is a quantitative research. Okay, we have the answers, right? Okay, Ira. Yes.
First one is qualitative and second one is quantitative. No.
Okay, how many no's? Okay, how many yes? You can't be both, or you can't be neither. That's not a stance. Come on, everybody. What is it? Ki, kunta. Ira, any second thoughts? Look at them again, everybody. Are you telling me to guess? I don't know. Why is the answer to the question is a question? Okay, so thank you. It was not my purpose to make you nervous, but look at them again, everybody. Motivation of parent involvement in secondary level schooling, and then school principals' influence on trust. Perspectives of mothers of children with disabilities. 2 clues are there. Perspectives and really not to put into a sense of a variable kind of a word, trust. Can we measure it? No. Can we measure it? So if we don't know about the first one, at least we know about the second one. So which one is a qualitative research? Number 3. It's always the third option, right? It's always the third option. So the second one is a qualitative research, and the first one would be, for our convenience, we have to go with a quantitative research because we don't know any better, right? All right. So next, moving on. Literature review. So a literature review is a tricky part because sometimes as researchers, especially as beginners in research, we tend to take this for granted. A literature review is not to take for granted, and it's very crucial for to drive our research to the right direction. We'll come to that. Let us look at the slide first. A literature review is used in both qualitative and quantitative research to document the past and current state of information as a research on a research topic. So past and current stage of information, right? I didn't say knowledge because that probably somewhat narrows it down for you. I wanted you to have the simplest possible definition, and somehow Creswell has done it again, and we know that it is the current and past form of research, ideas, information, whatever we have on that topic can be considered. So next you have, as you already know, in a quantitative study, literature review justifies or documents the need for the study and to work as a trajectory for the research questions and research purpose to be formed. So as I mentioned again previously, that in a quantitative research, literature review can really help you initially to form research questions, research problem of your research, and really help you in this regard. But on the other hand, in a qualitative research, we draw conclusions from the participants' point of view. We draw conclusions from the views, the data we receive from the participants in order to enlighten or in order to improve the particular topics knowledge, current level of knowledge. So a literature review takes a back seat in qualitative research. We'll come into that later on. So on the other hand, as you can see, qualitative research draws conclusion from the participants' data and do not make predictions, and so the literature review in this case may be positioned at the end of a paper to support or modify existing findings on the literature. Findings mane ki everybody? What is the findings?
Ma'am, the name itself suggests something. What is findings? Ma'am, what we get after analyzing the data.
It's the results, right?
Yes.
It's the results that we got from our data collection. By administering data collection, you receive findings. So keeping that in mind, let us look why we need a literature review, or where should we place a literature review, or why. The literature review part comes after the introduction section of a study. So introduction e ki chilo? Research problem chilo na? And statement of the purpose, etc., etc. And then we have the literature review right before the methodology and also after the introduction. Clear everybody? Where to put a literature review? After the introduction. Yes. All right. Tips to write a good literature review. I know, you know something. I would assume many things about a literature review. Let us look what we don't know or what we take for granted. Oftentimes, we treat a literature review as a separate entity that sits alone and does not do much. It's what? Other researchers, what they said about a topic. যেমন তোমার rationale যখন লিখেছো in your lesson plan, you completely took it for granted. Rationale কেন লাগে? Why do we need to have a rationale anyway? What does it matter that what other people said about this topic, about this skill anyway? So a literature review is often looked down upon, but here's the catch. A literature review can really make your methodology rich, can really make your unity of research strong, can really make your flow of talk in your research smooth, and can ensure coherence in your research paper. So if you have a good idea, a good initial readings done on the topic that you are working on, that can drive and help you throughout the research. So let us look at how. As young researchers, it is crucial to walk the extra mile and do a thorough initial readings before penning anything on a given topic. This process, though tedious, not only opens new avenues to consider on the existing research topic, but also makes the paper rich in methodology, as I mentioned. You can identify key terms of your research and type in Google Scholar. Google Scholar keyboard to tumra chino, tai na? Okhane type korle we usually are directed towards a certain type of data, and that's scholarly data. So that's something you can, from the top of my mind, that's something you can right now use. It is important to quickly, and see what literature you can find on your topic. So first go ahead on Google Scholar, type in the research topics, the key words that you find in your research. For example, if your research is on peer feedback, then you have certain key words to search: peer feedback, language class, EFL classroom, peer feedback classroom, peer feedback assessment, peer assessment, and many other keywords. So if you search on those, there will be certain angles that are interesting that you will find, and you can just go on to that article and read up on that, so that you have new avenues opening up to you. On the other hand, thirdly, when you have spotted a research article by searching the keywords, it is important to quickly skim through the abstract section and the methodology to determine whether it is relevant for your study or not, because we don't have the time to read through all the research articles that we have our eyes set on. So let us just be practical and look into the abstract first. If the abstract is interesting, move into the methodology. If the abstract doesn't incite you, don't even bother, because there are other research articles that you will come across. If yes, you should immediately download the resource in a separate folder to organize better. Organizing literature is crucial, because I think many expert researchers struggle with this because they don't really have their thoughts together in a place. Organizing can go a long way, especially quantitative research. So having a folder, having a Drive folder, having a Dropbox, having something out there, having a note on your diary, having a portfolio for your research helps a long way. All right, next, researchers follow different techniques of documenting their literature review. You have to go through the articles and highlight information as you know you wish to cite into your own research paper. Many follow a digital folder to keep their notes. Some also do a literature review mapping to create a Word file, or where everything is organized in a chart or a table. These are also there, the OG methods to follow. So a Word file is still relevant. You can use it anytime, and it's important. Literature review section is adding the voices from other researchers. Mind you, please read with me this line, because it's important. I don't want you to miss it. Literature review section is adding the voices from other researchers, so be careful not to plagiarize and take away their rightful credit. This goes against everything a research stands for. Be sure to properly cite your sources, and where necessary, paraphrase and summarize properly, accordingly, whether you paraphrase or not. An idea copied will have to be given proper credit through citation. This is crucial. So do not even think about copying off the internet, because it won't get you anywhere. It's just a bad practice, and it's actually a crime in today's world. Anyway, there is no definite number of research that you should cite in your paper. There is no particular number that this much bibliography information you should have in your research. Bibliography should be 3 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages. There is no hard and fast rule on that. But I would say that in a 3,000 to 5,000 research paper, you should have at least 20 citations. And 20 citations is not much, by the way. If you look at, if you read up one good scholarly article, you will at least find 50. Sorry, that's probably a bit of a stretch. No, you won't find 50, but you will find more than 10. So you have there already more than 10. So what's the problem in citing 20 research literature reviews? All right. Oh, did I miss a page? No. All right. So since we are talking about literature review, let us think about what can be cited. What can we cite? Acha, is it not coming?
No.
Hello? Okay. As far as materials to cite from go, the world is your oyster. This is something that, anyway, depending on your research approach, qualitative or quantitative, the sources you can cite from is increasingly getting more and more versatile, because nowadays, as you've probably found it in many researches already, you can use Facebook posts, Facebook comments, or such other online data in your research paper as well, with proper citation. You can use newspapers, you can also use website links. So those are there, they are valid now, they are published. As long as they are valid and you do the citation right, you can incorporate them in your research. So there is a good resource, owl.purdue.edu, and they have all the citations, all sorts of documents that you can cite from, and how you can cite from them in this website. So you can just go in and you will find anything and everything in terms of the citation that you're looking for. Next, however, there are a few considerations to follow when citing a source. The source you are citing from has to be authentic, relevant, and academic. For example, the source you are citing, okay, for example, if you use an online journal, you have to make sure that the journal has a peer-reviewed review board, so that their publications are not just, you know, open access plus not peer-reviewed plus non-refereed journal. Don't make the mistake. So you have to look into these criteria, in terms of these criteria. Next, you can check if you recognize the authors. This is a bit difficult for us because we don't know many authors, but you can still see if there are authors that your faculty has talked about in class, and if you find something that's there, then very good. Or if the organization is trustworthy or not. You can also check if the website has their own terms and policies to ensure credibility, reliability. Next, start with referee journal. This is not me, this is what Creswell said, 2015. He said that first you should look into refereed journal articles, then maybe non-refereed journal articles, then maybe books, then conference papers, dissertations, then non-thesis items, etc. So you have a hierarchy here. So when you think about quoting something, you should have at least think about these things first. When Googling, look for research studies, because if you look for research studies, you will have a particular structure going on. First of all, you will have a literature review, then they will have a methodology, then they will have data collection, then they will have analysis. So research studies have a particular structure that can help you, because this is what you are getting at. তুমিও একটা research study করবে, তুমিও একটা research article লিখবে. So having them, reading them goes a long way. Ask a faculty member if your article is of substance. যদি আর্টিকেলটা নিয়ে সন্দেহ থাকে, ask your teachers and if you can quote from this article. What to question in a research question? So research questions are important because remember, I think sir has noticed that as well. When I was there with sir, I noticed that as well. You don't know how to write a proper research question, and that really shows, and that really can destroy your research paper, because a research question will have the variables that you have identified. It will have the major data collection method that you might pursue in your research. So if it goes wrong, the research can go lopsided. Alright, needless to say, research questions are questions that the researcher seeks answers for. Duh. In a qualitative or quantitative research, a research question section typically comes after the literature review or before the methodology section, because by then the researcher has a fairly good idea about the purpose of their research. So in order to write a good research question, you need to know what does your research want to prove, or what is the purpose of your research. Previously we learned that quantitative research deals with the relationship among variables. In other words, characteristics of individuals under research. So a variable is what? Characteristics of individuals. A variable is characteristics of individuals. So that's something a research question in a quantitative research takes into account. So you need to know about the variables, concrete knowledge about which variables you are going to discuss in your research paper. Then in qualitative research, however, it wants to deeply understand a central phenomenon. Hence, the research questions in a quantitative research will look into its research purpose and jot down the measurable attributes of the participants and form research questions that relate to these attributes. What did I just say? So in a quantitative research, you will look into what? You will look into the research purpose and jot down the measurable attributes, mane variables, that you have identified in your research that you are going to study on, and form research questions that relate to these attributes. So you have to bring in the variables in your research questions. How do we do that? Let's look. For example, a research on the subjective and objective challenges students face in peer checking activity. Peer checking activity, that's the topic, and the subjective and objective challenges maybe are the variables. Let's look into this. What are some major subjective and objective challenges students face in peer checking activities? Do subjective challenges affect students more than objective challenges? The activity is, what do you think are the measurable attributes in these two statements, in these two questions? কোনগুলো variable in these two questions? Which are the variables? Which are the measurable variables? Take half a minute. You got the answer? Hurry up, hurry up. Okay, what are the attributes, everybody? What are the variables that we need to collect data on? আমরা কিসের উপর data collect করব? Challenges, what kind of challenges?
Challenges that students face.
What kind of challenges they face here? What are the two main challenge types that we have? Subjective and objective. But the variable is what? Challenges, right? But if we have categorized the variable into two, subjective and objective. So that is there in the research question, right? So we need to have the variables in the research question or not? Yes? Yes? A louder yes?
Yes.
Okay.